Hi guys! Today I'm going to show you how algebra can help us investigate the disappearance of D.B. Cooper. So, first of all, witness statements put D.B. Cooper at between 170 and 180 pounds-ish. Plus, he asked for $200,000 in small bills, and the FBI gave it to him in $20 bills. So I've calculated that $200,000 in $20 bills would weigh about 21 pounds. So there's the weight of D.B. Cooper himself plus the money he's carrying. On top of that, he jumped out of a plane that was 10,000 feet in the air. He specifically asked the pilot of the plane to fly at 10,000 feet in the air, so he might have been doing some calculations himself. Anyway, for this, I'm going to estimate that D.B. Cooper plus the money weighed about 200 pounds-ish. We got to make a few assumptions here. I like 200 because it's a nice round number. Once he fell, or jumped, I guess, out of the airplane, he would be falling faster before he pulled his parachute and slower after he pulled his parachute because gravity, honestly, and the air resistance of the parachute pushing back up. Anyway, on planet Earth, gravity pulls at 9.8 newtons. And remember, I'm estimating that D.B. Cooper plus the money weighs about 200 pounds. So based on these numbers, I've figured that D.B. Cooper, before he pulled his parachute, was falling at about 32 feet per second. And probably, this is a guess, but probably he was pretty scared. Anyway, after he pulls his parachute, gravity's still pulling down on him, but the air is pushing back up where it gets caught in the parachute. This calculation is a little harder, but I figure between 22 and 24 feet per second was about how fast he was falling after he pulled his parachute. The numbers, again, a little squishy, but this is a pretty good estimate, I think. Whew. Another really important thing to know is when he pulled his parachute, because remember, he's falling at different speeds before and after. We think he took a T-10 military parachute, and I looked it up because I'm really nerdy. You're supposed to pull the parachute after 4 seconds if you're using this kind of parachute. So again, we have to guess kind of a lot, but we're going to assume that he knew what he was doing and he pulled the parachute after 4 seconds, which meant for the first 4 seconds he was falling at 32 feet per second, which would mean he fell 128 feet in those first 4 seconds. Then he pulled the parachute and the speed at which he was falling changed. Anyway, so remember, he was 10,000 feet in the air. So after 4 seconds, he was 10,000 feet in the air minus 128. I gotta be honest with you guys here, I used a calculator. I didn't do this one in my head. But that means that after 4 seconds, D.B. Cooper would have been 9,872 feet in the air. Whew! We can finally get to the algebra. Remember how I said that D.B. Cooper would have been falling between 22 and 24 feet per second after he pulled his parachute? Well, I picked a number in the middle. It's another squishy number, but you just have to make some of these decisions. So for my calculations, I'm figuring he's falling 23 feet per second. He's going to fall 23 feet per second for a certain number of seconds before he reaches the ground, but we don't know how many seconds that is, so that's our variable. 23 times something is going to get him to the ground. So remember, at this point, he was 9,872 feet in the air. How many seconds is it going to take him to reach the ground? What we have on both sides is numbers. So I'm going to divide 23 by 23. That makes it equal 1. 1 times a number is that number. So we basically just get rid of 23. But if I do it to one side, I have to do the exact same to the other side. So I'm going to divide 9,872 by 23. Again, full disclosure, I'm using a calculator because it's summer. The answer would be 429.2 seconds. If he was falling at 23 feet per second, it would have taken him 429.2 seconds to reach the ground, and then I'm assuming get away with the loot. I'm dividing 429.2 by 60 because there's 60 seconds in a minute to see about how many minutes that is. and it's 7.15. Whew! So, if everything went perfectly, he would have been hanging out in the air with a parachute for a little bit more than 7 minutes. Of course, if finding D.B. Cooper were as simple as algebra, he would be found. There are a lot of other factors that our math problem didn't consider, and I'd like just to pause here for a minute and say this is absolutely my all-time favorite math story problem ever. But some other factors we didn't really consider were the wind speed. If the wind was blowing really hard, it might have affected where he drifted off to in his chute and how fast he was going. Plus, we guessed, it was a good guess, but we guessed about when he pulled his parachute, or if he pulled his parachute. We also guessed on the weight, and another thing that's going to affect our calculations is the airplane speed. So there are a lot of things we didn't consider, but this was a really neat, simple algebra problem. And if you want to redo this problem and change the numbers a little bit, I'd be really interested in your results. Happy sleuthing!